Life perpetuates itself through diversity, and this includes the ability to sacrifice itself when necessary. Cells repeat the process of degeneration and regeneration until one day they die, obliterating an entire set of memory and information. Only genes remain. Why continually repeat this cycle? Simply to survive by avoiding the weaknesses of an unchanging system. In cyberpunk worlds, technology is king. You've got cybernetic enhancements, AI systems, and advanced robotics. But these advancements come at a cost: massive inequality, environmental destruction, and corporate dominance. Sound familiar? In Battle Angel Alita, we see a society divided. The elites of Salem live in luxury while the scrapyard's inhabitants scavenge just to survive. Similarly, in Ghost in the Shell, cyberbrains and enhancements create a digital utopia for the rich while the poor are left behind. In America, the wealth gap has indeed reached a level that feels ripped from the pages of a dystopian cyberpunk novel. On one end of the spectrum, billionaires are shaping the world with grandiose projects, private space missions, AI breakthroughs, luxury megacities, and cutting-edge technologies that promise to redefine life as we know it. Their wealth has transcended traditional measures, granting them influence over industries, politics, and even cultural narratives. They are building a future tailored to their vision, often detached from the realities of the majority. Meanwhile, millions of Americans grapple with the harsh contradictions of this advanced yet unequal society. Basic needs such as healthcare remain an insurmountable burden for many. Medical bills continue to drive people into bankruptcy, with families forced to choose between life-saving treatments and financial ruin. Even as technology progresses, access to these advancements remains starkly unequal, often reserved for those who can afford it. Housing insecurity, student debt, and low-wage work further highlight the widening chasm. The juxtaposition is striking. While some invest in sprawling underground bunkers or dream of colonizing Mars, others struggle to secure a roof over their heads or recover from an unexpected illness. This divide isn't just economic, it extends to opportunities, education, and even lifespan, as wealth directly correlates with better health outcomes. In this climate, the idea of cyberpunk levels isn't just hyperbole. It reflects a society where technological marvels coexist with systemic inequality, where towering skyscrapers overlook neighborhoods battling systemic neglect. It paints a picture of a future that feels both incredible and unsettling, a reminder of the urgent need to address these disparities before the gap becomes an unbridgeable chasm. One of the most defining features of cyberpunk dystopias is the overwhelming dominance of corporations, often to the detriment of traditional government institutions. In Ghost in the Shell, corporations like Serrano Genomics wield immense power, manipulating governments, controlling public resources, and shaping the lives of ordinary citizens. They blur the lines between public and private interests, operating as shadow governments in a hyper-capitalistic landscape. The parallels in modern America are unsettling. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Meta command staggering amounts of power, not just economically, but politically and socially as well. They collect and monetize vast amounts of personal data, often with minimal oversight. This data enables them to shape public opinion, target voters with precision during elections, and even influence the outcome of democratic processes. Governments often struggle to regulate these tech giants, leaving them free to consolidate power and operate in a space where accountability is murky at best. Policies from labor rights to privacy laws are shaped by their lobbying efforts, giving them an outsized voice in determining the rules by which society operates. Beyond their influence on policy, we are witnessing the encroachment of corporate control into spaces traditionally managed by the public sector. Consider the privatization of law enforcement and essential services, a trope vividly depicted in Battle Angel Alita, where bounty hunters and private contractors replace the police. In America, private security firms and tech-driven surveillance companies are taking on roles once reserved for public institutions. From facial recognition systems deployed in public spaces to companies like Palantir working directly with police forces, the line between justice and profit is increasingly blurred. Wealthy neighborhoods hire private patrols, and corporations manage the security of entire communities, prioritizing the interests of those who pay rather than the public at large. Even basic utilities and services are not immune. In some areas, water, energy, and transportation are controlled by private entities that prioritize profit over accessibility, leaving vulnerable communities behind. This mirrors cyberpunk worlds where essential services are commodities, accessible only to those who can afford them, creating a stark divide between the haves and have-nots. The consequences of this privatization are profound. Justice and fairness, ideals central to a functioning democracy, become secondary to profitability. The risk is a society where corporations dictate the rules, leaving governments to play catch-up, and the people they are meant to serve are increasingly marginalized. In many ways, this evolving reality feels eerily close to the speculative fiction of Cyberpunk, where unchecked corporate power leads to a fractured, inequitable world. In Ghost in the Shell, the Laughing Man is a striking example of how the tools of a hyper-connected world can be wielded to both challenge and expose corruption. His ability to hack cyber brains, alter memories, and manipulate perceptions underscores the immense vulnerability of a society where technology is deeply integrated into human existence. What's chilling is how plausible this scenario feels in the real world today. Consider the technologies we already use: smartphones, smart home devices, wearable tech, and more. These tools connect us to each other and the world, but they also create vast pools of data about our lives, our locations, habits, preferences, and even our most private thoughts. This data isn't just collected for convenience or innovation. In many cases, it's bought, sold, and exploited as a commodity. Corporations and governments can, and often do, use it to track, influence, and control individuals on an unprecedented scale. Facial recognition systems, for example, are no longer confined to dystopian science fiction. They're deployed in airports, streets, schools, and workplaces, tracking faces in real time. In some countries, this technology is already being used for social control, such as in China's social credit system. But even in democratic nations, the lack of regulation means this technology is ripe for abuse. Companies like Clearview AI have scraped billions of images from the internet without consent, creating a database that is being used by law enforcement and private organizations. The idea that your face can be recognized, tracked, and logged wherever you go feels uncomfortably close to the cyberpunk vision of a society where privacy is an illusion. Mass data collection amplifies this loss of privacy. Everything from your online searches to your GPS location is tracked and stored, often without your explicit knowledge or consent. Governments and corporations wield this data to build detailed profiles of individuals, allowing them to predict and influence behavior. Just as cyberpunk narratives show memories and thoughts being hacked, real-world data manipulation through micro-targeted advertising, misinformation campaigns, and algorithmic biases demonstrates how easily reality itself can be distorted. The concept of "your data isn't yours anymore" is no longer theoretical. Data breaches expose sensitive information daily, and once it's out there, it's nearly impossible to take back. In the hands of bad actors, this data can be used to steal identities, ruin reputations, or manipulate public opinion. As we integrate more advanced AI, neural interfaces, and even brain-machine technologies, the stakes grow higher. Just like in Ghost in the Shell, the potential for misuse is staggering. Thoughts could be influenced by targeted stimuli, memories could be fabricated with digital precision, and reality itself could be questioned. The dystopian vision of a hyper-connected world where privacy is extinct and technology is both a tool and a weapon isn't in some distant future, it's on our doorstep. The decisions we make today about how to regulate these technologies and safeguard individual freedoms will determine whether we live in a connected utopia or a cyberpunk nightmare. Let's talk about a fictional symbol of rebellion, the Laughing Man from Ghost in the Shell. As a hacker vigilante, he takes it upon himself to expose corruption in the healthcare industry, unveiling the greed and exploitation behind powerful institutions. His actions, though arguably noble in intent, are marked by chaos and disruption, often leaving collateral damage in their wake. His rebellion is a double-edged sword. While it shines a light on systemic issues, it also blurs the lines between justice and anarchy. Now contrast this with the recent United Healthcare shooting and the actions of Luigi Mangione. This incident was driven by an individual's anger and frustration with the healthcare system, an outburst of violence born from personal despair and systemic failure. Unlike the Laughing Man's approach to exposing injustice, Luigi took a more hardline approach, carefully calculating each step and micromanaging his actions and their unfolding aftermath, much like with the Monopoly money. Unlike typical expectations, across social media, mass media has weaponized its ignorance to overlook real societal issues, such as corruption and unfair practices in the healthcare industry, pushing Luigi, much like the Laughing Man, into action. Although Luigi's actions may seem drastic, hurtful, and harmful, it is important to remember that the Laughing Man is a fictional character. Luigi, on the other hand, is a living human being whose actions reflect the behavior of individuals who feel as though they have no other options. More importantly, the real and human response to Luigi mirrors the fictional reaction to the Laughing Man. This parallel creates a sense of cohesion among individuals, fostering a willingness to look beyond surface-level divisions that often hinder unity. Both cases, one fictional and one tragically real, serve as reflections of the profound frustration and rage that emerge from systems riddled with inequality. Whether it is the denial of affordable healthcare or the prioritization of profit over people, these systemic issues leave many feeling powerless and unheard. However, the outcomes of their actions differ significantly. The Laughing Man's rebellion, though flawed and controversial, forces society to confront uncomfortable truths and opens the door to dialogue. In contrast, real-world violence often achieves the opposite. In a world increasingly affected by corporate greed and corruption, where the majority of people awaken to the twisted perversions and meddling of the elite, the lines of division begin to blur. This awakening sparks a new kind of enlightenment, yet it also reveals a tragedy of the commons, where the exploited resource is the human spirit, depleted of empathy, understanding, and patience. This comparison underscores a critical question about addressing systemic injustices. While frustration with inequality is justified, the methods used to confront these issues can drastically alter their outcomes. Fictional narratives, such as Ghost in the Shell, provide a space to explore these moral and ethical dilemmas. Meanwhile, real-world events serve as stark reminders of the devastating consequences when anger and despair manifest destructively. Ultimately, both examples compel us to ask, how can we channel outrage into meaningful change rather than chaos and division? Now, let's delve into transhumanism, the concept of enhancing human capabilities and potentially transcending biological limitations through advanced technology. In Ghost in the Shell, transhumanism takes center stage with cybernetic bodies, offering the promise of immortality, limitless physical strength, and unparalleled cognitive abilities. However, these advancements come at a philosophical and ethical cost. What defines humanity when our physical forms can be entirely replaced? Is it our consciousness, our memories, or something ineffable? Moreover, the question of control looms large. Who develops and governs this transformative technology? And crucially, who has access to it? Fast forward to today, and the seeds of transhumanism are already being planted in the real world. Biohacking enthusiasts experiment with implants to enhance physical or sensory abilities, while companies like Neuralink are pioneering brain-machine interfaces that could revolutionize how we interact with technology. Prosthetics are evolving to outperform biological limbs, and gene editing technologies like CRISPR hint at the possibility of redesigning human biology. These advancements blur the line between human and machine, echoing the cyberpunk vision of a society where technology is not just a tool, but an integral part of the self. However, just as in cyberpunk narratives, these developments raise significant concerns. One of the most pressing is inequality. In Ghost in the Shell, the cybernetic enhancements that promise immortality and superhuman abilities are often reserved for the privileged few, while the underprivileged struggle with limited access to even basic resources. This creates a two-tiered society, one where the wealthy can afford to enhance and extend their lives indefinitely, while the rest are left behind, limited by their biological constraints. We're already seeing this dynamic play out in today's emerging technologies. Cutting-edge medical treatments, advanced prosthetics, and experimental biohacking are often prohibitively expensive and accessible only to those with significant financial resources. Neural implants, for example, could transform how we learn, communicate, and work, but there's a risk that only the wealthy will benefit from these breakthroughs. This could exacerbate existing divides, creating a society where not just wealth, but physical and cognitive abilities are stratified, with technology becoming the ultimate gatekeeper. There are also ethical and existential questions to consider. If our memories can be uploaded or our brains connected to a digital network, what happens to concepts like individuality and privacy? Who controls the flow of information and the maintenance of these systems? Can such technologies be weaponized or manipulated? As in Ghost in the Shell, these issues force us to confront not only what we can do with technology, but also what we should do. Transhumanism holds immense promise, offering solutions to age-old problems like disease, disability, and even mortality. But without careful consideration of accessibility, ethics, and governance, it risks becoming a dystopian reality where the technology designed to liberate humanity instead entrenches inequality and power imbalances. The questions raised by cyberpunk fiction are no longer hypothetical. They are challenges we must address as we stand on the brink of a transhumanist future. Environmental collapse is another defining feature of cyberpunk dystopias, where humanity's disregard for the natural world has left the planet in a state of ruin. In Battle Angel Alita, the scrapyard is a grim symbol of this decay, a sprawling wasteland littered with discarded technology, industrial waste, and pollution. It serves as both a backdrop and a metaphor for a society that prioritizes progress and consumption over sustainability. Similarly, Ghost in the Shell portrays a world where urban sprawl and unchecked development have transformed the environment, with sprawling megacities surrounded by degraded ecosystems and polluted waters. These dystopian landscapes reflect a future shaped by the consequences of environmental neglect and exploitation. In America today, we're already grappling with the very real effects of climate change and environmental degradation. Rising temperatures, extreme weather events, shrinking biodiversity, and polluted air and water are no longer hypothetical threats. They are our lived reality. Communities across the country face wildfires, flooding, and hurricanes with increasing frequency and intensity. Yet, rather than addressing the systemic issues driving these crises, we often turn to short-term technological fixes, much like the stopgap solutions seen in cyberpunk worlds. For example, geoengineering technologies, such as solar radiation management or carbon capture, are being explored as ways to mitigate climate change. While these innovations have potential, they echo the cyberpunk tendency to treat symptoms rather than causes. They sidestep the root problem, a global economic system that prioritizes consumption, extraction, and profit over sustainability. Similarly, green tech solutions, like electric vehicles and renewable energy, are steps in the right direction, but often fail to address deeper systemic issues, such as overconsumption and environmental justice. Like in Battle Angel Alita or Ghost in the Shell, this approach risks creating a society where the wealthy and powerful can shield themselves from environmental collapse, while the marginalized bear the brunt of its consequences. In cyberpunk, this is often depicted through stratified societies. Those in gleaming towers and advanced facilities live relatively unscathed lives, while the masses toil in polluted slums. In our world, we see echoes of this in the uneven distribution of environmental harm. Low-income and marginalized communities are disproportionately affected by pollution, rising sea levels, and lack of access to clean water and air, while wealthier individuals can afford to insulate themselves through technology or relocation. This reliance on short-term fixes also mirrors cyberpunk's critique of techno-utopianism, the idea that technology alone can solve problems created by technology. It highlights a dangerous complacency, a belief that we can innovate our way out of environmental collapse without fundamentally rethinking how we live, consume, and interact with the natural world. While technological advancements are vital, they cannot replace the need for systemic changes in policy, culture, and economics. The environmental themes of cyberpunk serve as a cautionary tale, reminding us that the path to a sustainable future requires more than just innovation. It demands accountability, equity, and a willingness to confront the systemic forces driving environmental collapse. Otherwise, we risk turning our world into the scrapyard of Battle Angel Alita or the polluted megacities of Ghost in the Shell, a dystopia of our own making. So are we living in a cyberpunk dystopia? Not quite, not yet, but the warning signs are all around us. The wealth gap, corporate control, loss of privacy, and environmental crises show us a future that looks alarmingly like the worlds of Ghost in the Shell and Battle Angel Alita. The question is, will we take action to change course? Can we fight for ethical technology, fair governance, and environmental sustainability before it's too late? Or are we destined to become characters in our own cyberpunk story? Thank you for taking the time to stop by BluSky Zealot. The purpose of this video was to emphasize the timeless statement that life imitates art. Growing up in the 90s with cyberpunk, many of the societal issues depicted in those stories felt distant and almost fantastical. However, as this video highlights, the warning signs are increasingly evident in our own reality. What do you think? Are we headed toward a cyberpunk future, or is there still time to change course? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.